Like Roblox, the Sandbox allows you to build your own 3D games using its Game Maker application.
And we're going to search for Google Fonts website. Now, in addition to these default fonts, we can actually load new fonts from the internet. And we're going to learn how to default them is called Arial. Another one that we've seen is called Times New Roman. That's basically the font that we get on a fresh website. Now, in addition to these default fonts, we can actually load new fonts from the internet. And we're going to learn how to do that within this structure. So let's go to our webpage. And Google actually provides a lot of really great free fonts that we can use. So we're going to open a new tab and we're going to search for Google Fonts. And we're going to go into this first link. Now, this website might look a little different for you, but the general process is the same. First, we're going to search for a font that we like. So a good font to use here is Roboto. And this is the font that we're going to use for our final. no project. We're going to pick this font, and then inside here, we're going to pick the styles that we want. So for example, I'm going to pick the regular style, and I'm also going to pick the bold style here. So I'm going to pick the bold style. And then I'm going to go to the basket of fonts that I selected, and then Google is going to give me the code that I need to load these fonts. All we need to do is copy this code exactly and then put it in our head section of our HTML. So we're going to put it in our structure in this head section. And now we've loaded a new font that we can use on our website. So now let's go back to our website, and we're going to use this new font. So remember that currently we set our fonts to Arial. So let's change Arial here to Roboto. Now when I save the font, is going to change. And there you go. It might not look that much different because Roboto is very similar to Arial, but if we inspect and we click on this element and go to the Computed tab, we'll see that the font family has now been changed to Roboto. So this is how we can load a huge selection of fonts from Google onto our webpage and use them on our website. So those are the features that we get from following this HTML structure. Every website that we create from now on will always have an HTML tag, a head and a body, and a doc type at the top.
Oh. Yeah.
Now we're ready to work on the final project of this course, recreating YouTube.com. Just like before, I've created a page on my website that'll show us what the final project looks like. So first, we're going to close all of our browser tabs because we're going to start over again. And then we're going to open a new page. And we're going to go to supersimple.dev/exercises/YouTube. So on this page, you can see what our final project will look like. So we're going to learn how to recreate youtube.com
Hello, everybody. My name is Markiplier, and welcome back to the Try Not to Laugh Challenge. And surprise, surprise, I'm not dead. I was working on a very
Hello, friends. It's me. Today we're gonna be. Oh man, I don't even want to know how this ended. I really.
that you see here. So first, let's set up our project in our code editor. So let's go into here and let's actually create a folder that's going to contain all of our previous code. So the final project is going to contain a lot of code, so we don't want to get it confused with the previous lessons. So let's call this intro-to-html. And we're going to put everything inside this folder. I'm going to put this in here and these HTML files in here as well. Next, we're going to create a new HTML file for our final project. And I actually put it inside this folder. I'm going to take it out by dragging it down here. So now we have an intro to HTML folder and our youtube.html, and we're ready to get started. First, we're going to set up the proper structure of HTML that we learned in the previous lesson. So we're going to start off with a less than exclamation doc type.
কি আছে 11টায়
and HTML. And then we're going to create an HTML element that's going to contain our entire web page. And inside here, we're going to have a head element. And we're also going to have a body element. Now that we have this structure, we can open it with Live Server. And now we have our blank page. So this page is going to automatically reload when we change our code. Now, before we can work on the final project, we need to learn 2 more HTML elements: how to load images onto our website and how to create a search box. So let's start with loading images first. So I'm going to show you how you can download these thumbnails from my website. We're going to right click in a blank area and inspect. And now if we click this icon in the top left and hover over an image and click it, and you might need to drag this down to see the HTML, we can find the image in the HTML, and here is the URL for the image. So we can actually click this and it will open the image in a new tab, and we can Control S to save it. So make sure we save this image in the folder that contains all of our code. So that's this folder for me. I'm going to save it. And now in my code editor, I can see the image. Next, we're going to create an HTML element to load this onto our page. So I'm going to go back to my page here. And then we're going to go into the body and create the image element, which is less than img greater than. Now the image element is unique because it's another void element. So we mentioned void elements briefly in the previous lesson. It's an element that doesn't require a closing tag. So this is one of those exceptions to the rule. So the image element takes one attribute called src. Now this attribute tells the computer which image to display on the website. So for us, that image is the one we downloaded called thumbnail1.webp. So we're going to display thumbnail-1.webp. And when I save it, the image is now loaded onto our website. So this source attribute works the same way as the link attribute that we saw earlier. It follows the rules of file paths to locate our file. So just as a reminder, if we type thumbnail1.webp here, it's going to look for a file named thumbnail1.webp right beside our HTML file. It's going to find it, and the image is the one we downloaded. One of the less than, you go into the body page in the atlas, and it will open the image in a new tab, and we can Control S to save it. So make sure we save this image in the folder that contains all of our code. So that's this folder for me. I'm going to save it. And now in my code, editor onto our img greater than. Now the image element is unique because it's another void element. So we mentioned void elements briefly in the previous lesson, to the RC. Now this attribute tells the computer which image to display on the website. So for us, that image is the one we downloaded called thumbnail1.webp. So we're going to display thumbnail-1.webp. And when I save it, the image is now loaded onto our website. So this source attribute works the same way as the link attribute that we saw earlier. It follows the rules of file paths to locate our file. So just as a reminder, if we type thumbnail1.webp here, it's going to look for a file named thumbnail1.webp right beside our HTML file. It's going to find it and then load it onto our website. But now we're actually going to create a folder because we have multiple thumbnails and we want to organize them. We're going to create a folder called thumbnails. And we're going to drag this into that folder. So now for this source attribute, we don't have a file beside our HTML called thumbnail1.webp, and then you see this error here. So this means that there was an error loading an image. Now to find it in the thumbnails file, we're going to type thumbnails/thumbnail1.webp. So first, it's going to look for a file or folder called thumbnails beside inside the HTML file. It finds this one, and then the slash here means to go inside the folder and then find this file inside that folder, which is here. So that's how we load images onto our page. Now we're going to learn how to style our image elements. So let's go into our head section here and create a style element. Now, before we do that, I forgot to do something, which is let's create a title for our page. So we can call this youtube.com clone. And if we save this, the title will show up in the tabs. All right, so let's learn how to style our image. So as always, we're going to give it a class attribute. And let's just call this thumbnail. And now we can target this class in our CSS. So dot thumbnail. Now, all of the CSS properties that we learned so far apply to the image. Some of them make sense and some of them don't. So one property that obviously doesn't make sense is something like font-size. So if I save it, you'll see nothing changes because there is no text inside this element. It's an image. So even though this works, it doesn't really change anything. Now a property that does make sense for an image is width. So this will set the width of this image. Let's make it smaller to match what we have here. So let's make the width something like 300 pixels. Now we save it, and now the width
হয়েছে? কি হয়েছে? পড়তেছি। রাইখা দাও। রাখো, আমি নিচ্ছি।
Width of this image is 300 pixels. So one thing you might notice is that when we set the width of an image, the height also changes. So before we had this, notice that the image was a lot taller.
Oh,
But as soon as we set the width, the height also adjusts. So that's one behavior of images that we should know. When we set the width, the height will also adjust so that the image has the same dimensions. What I mean by same dimensions is that it keeps the same shape. So for example, if I set the height as well, this is going to cause the image to lose its shape or lose its dimensions. Let's set the height to something like 600 pixels. Save it. And now you'll see that the image is 600 pixels tall, but it's lost its shape and now it's become stretched. So that behavior of an image sort of keeps us safe. So it keeps the image looking nice. Now, if we really wanted an image that was exactly 300 pixels by 300 pixels, what can we do? So this image, as you can see, is getting stretched out. So in addition to all the CSS properties that we've learned so far, the image element has its own properties that are specific to an image. So one of these is called object fit. So this determines what happens if this size doesn't match the image's dimensions or the image's shape. So for example, I can set a value of cover. So this tells the image to cover this 300 by 300 area, but it's also going to keep its shape. So this area might not be big enough to show the whole image, which may or may not be okay depending on what we want to do. Now we can adjust which part of the image that we see using another property called object-position. So currently we're looking at the center of the image. We can set the object position to left to view the left side of the image, or we can also set it to the right to view the right side of the image, in the case that the image doesn't fit in our area. Another value we can give to object fit is contain. So if we save this, the entire image is going to shrink until it is contained in this 300 by 300 area. So I'm going to set a border so that we can see what this is doing. I'm going to set a border of 2 pixels, border width of 2 pixels, border style of solid, border color of red. So here the border shows us our 300 by 300 area, and contain makes the image shrink until it is contained in the area. But that means that it might not be able to cover the entire area if it's not the right shape. So in this case, the object position can move the image to the top or to the bottom. So that's basically how images work. As you can see, a lot of the CSS properties that we learned before, like width and height and border, can be applied to the image element, and the image element also has some of its own properties that determine how the image is displayed. So for now, let's create something that's kind of like our final website. So I'm going to set the image width to 300, and I'm not going to set a height so that the image doesn't stretch and we don't have to do all this stuff. And I can actually just remove all of this. So the only thing I'm doing is telling the image to shrink down to a width of 300 and to shrink the height as well so that the image keeps its shape. So we're going to stick with this for now, and this is going to correspond to this part of our final project. And we're going to start learning how to build out the entire video preview. The next element we're going to learn in this lesson is how to create search boxes like the one you see up here. So let's go back into our website and we'll learn the code for creating a search box. The HTML for creating a text box is less than input greater than. So the input element is a void element, just like the image element. It doesn't require a closing tag. So the input element has several attributes that we can give it. One of them is called the type. So if we set the type equals text, it's going to give us a text box. I'm going to save this. And now in our HTML, you can see we have a text box. Another type that we can give to this input is called checkbox. So if I save this, now we have a checkbox. So for our purposes, we're going to set the type to a text box because we want to create the YouTube search box up here. So you also notice that this text box has the word search in it. And when I start typing, that search word is gone. So this is sort of like a label for the user, telling them what to put into this text box. And this is known as a placeholder. So if we go back to our website, we're going to add a placeholder to our new